Hello, thanks for watching my video. My name is Hamid Arzani. I'm a PhD student at the Rotman School of Management. First, I'm very grateful to Inform Service Science Award Committee for selecting our work as one of the finalists. I'm going to talk about our paper on equity versus efficiency in service systems with differentiated demand. This is a joint work with my advisor, Professor Ming and Professor Hossein Abouee-Mehrizi from University of Waterloo. Let me start with the motivation of our work. In public service systems that are constrained by limited resources, the service allocation policies selected by the service provider can significantly impact the well-being of the customers. Consider immigration systems as one example. Every year, countries with high immigration demand, they face the challenge of how to allocate their limited resources across different applicant groups that they're receiving. These applicant groups may be differentiated by various factors, such as urgency level, that is reflecting how sensitive each applicant is to delay. It could vary from humanitarian applicants that are very sensitive compared to business or visitor visas. Second, they may be differentiated in terms of arrival rates or the volume of applicants that these countries are getting within each of these applicant groups. And third, the initial well-being of the customers upon their arrival to the system may be different again across the applicants in different groups. Having this differentiated demand, any imbalanced prioritization of some groups can lead to prolonged waiting time and significant inequities across other groups. These equity concerns oftentimes arise when service providers follow strict prioritization policies. Here I have two examples. One in the US immigrant visa applications, they follow a tiered-based system that they categorize visa applicants based on their urgency level into 4 tier and serve them based on this order. However, they acknowledge that if they follow exactly this tier-based system, applicants from tier 3 and tier 4 they may face prolonged waiting time, and that's why they suggest that they adjust this policy by sometimes serving some applicants from tier 3 and tier 4. This is not limited to the immigration systems. In emergency departments, it's common practice to follow triage systems, that is categorizing patients based on their urgency needs and serving them based on that order. However, there is this empirical research suggesting that operators use their own discretion in order to be equitable in terms of like waiting time that the patients are serving from different groups. To study this trade-off, we consider a stylized queuing model with two classes of customers that are differentiated by their initial well-being, their sensitivity to delay, and their arrival rates. We allow the service provider to choose from the general set of all work-conserving non-preemptive policies, and we define the customer utility as the difference between the base utility and the disutility associated with the expected delay in the system. We call class 1 as the urgent class by assuming C1 is greater than C2. We consider two objectives. The first one follows the utilitarian perspective, which we call the efficient policy, that following from CMU rule, it suggests always strictly prioritizing the urgent class. This is consistent with what we oftentimes see in practice as strictly prioritizing based on the urgency levels. However, motivated by the equity concerns in the motivation, we also study this equitable policy motivated by the egalitarian perspective, that is maximizing the worst outcome across the two class and individual level. Now, having these two objectives, we define two metrics, each associated with each of the policies. First one is price of efficiency, that is relative equity loss under the efficient policy, and the price of equity, that is the relative efficiency loss under the equitable policy. And we aim to answer that if the conventional view on the efficiency equity frontier exists in our case, that is, if you want to move toward equity, you have to sacrifice efficiency, or the other way around. We first showed that the equitable policy may indeed agree with the efficient policy, and they may be fully aligned depending on the system utilization. In particular, we show a threshold-based behavior of equitable policy, that indeed the equitable policy is efficient in low utilization. This is the first answer toward the conventional view of the efficiency equity frontier. Moreover, in high utilization cases where equitable policy diverge from efficient policy, we characterize the price of equity and price of efficiency, and we show that they both are increasing and convex in system utilization. This highlights the effectiveness of even a slight increase in service capacity can significantly improve both of the price of equity and price of efficiency, and this can happen by like temporal hiring during peak period, or even modest investment in technology to increase the service capacity. And third, we characterize the price of equity and price of efficiency in terms of the problem parameters, where the price of equity is unimodal with respect to the ratio of arrivals and ratio of urgency levels, while the price of efficiency is monotone with respect to these parameters. And this result highlights that for given set of parameters, these two performance metrics are not always getting simultaneously high values, and therefore substantial improvements in one can sometimes be achieved with only marginal sacrifice in the others. And this further question the conventional view on the efficiency equity trade-off, that these two objectives are not necessarily at the opposite end of the spectrum. And finally, I would like to mention that in the new revision of our paper, soon to be uploaded on SSRM, we incorporate three extensions on our model to consider heterogeneity in terms of service rates. We introduce variance equitability notion and the analysis with the case that the customers may work. In that case, we introduce diversity among classes. With that, here is the QR code to our paper, and thank you very much for your attention.